The sound of her mother's hand striking her face echoed through the small parlor like a gunshot, and Emma Dalton knew in that instant that her life as she had known it was over. She stood there in the dim afternoon light of their modest home in Kearney, Nebraska, her hand pressed against her burning cheek, watching as her mother's face contorted with a rage she had never witnessed before. It was April of 1879, and the spring winds that swept across the prairie seemed gentle compared to the storm that had just been unleashed inside these walls. "You are no daughter of mine," her mother hissed, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "To bring such shame upon this family, to disgrace your father's memory with your sinfulness." Emma's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, still flat beneath the layers of her calico dress. She was 20 years old, and the man who had promised her marriage, who had whispered sweet words under the cottonwood trees by the Platte River, had disappeared 2 weeks ago when she told him about the baby. Thomas Henderson had boarded the eastbound train without so much as a goodbye, leaving her to face the consequences alone. "Mama, please," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I have nowhere to go." Her mother turned away, her shoulders rigid beneath her black mourning dress. She had worn nothing but black since Emma's father died 3 years ago, as if she wanted the world to know that joy had abandoned her life. "You should have thought of that before you laid down with that man like a common harlot. Pack your things and be gone before supper. I will not have you corrupting your younger sisters with your presence." Emma looked toward the stairs where she knew her 2 sisters, aged 16 and 14, were likely listening. They had been her closest companions, her dearest friends. The thought of never seeing them again made her chest tighten with a pain so sharp she could barely breathe. "Where will I go?" Emma asked, her voice breaking. "That is no longer my concern," her mother replied coldly, still refusing to look at her. "You made your choice. Now live with it." An hour later, Emma stood at the end of the dirt road that led away from the only home she had ever known, clutching a small carpet bag that contained everything she now owned in the world. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She had 47 cents in her pocket, no prospects, and a baby growing inside her that would make itself known within a few months. She walked toward town, her feet moving mechanically along the rutted road. Kearney had grown considerably since the railroad came through, transforming from a small fort town into a bustling community of nearly 2,000 people. But Emma knew that a woman in her condition would find few sympathetic souls here. News traveled fast, and by tomorrow morning, everyone would know about her disgrace. The main street was busy with the usual late afternoon activity. Wagons rolled past, kicking up dust that made Emma's eyes water. Merchants were beginning to close their shops, and cowhands from the surrounding ranches were making their way into the saloons. Emma kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone who might recognize her. She had no plan, no destination. All she knew was that she needed to find shelter before nightfall and figure out how to survive. The thought of the baby made her feel both terrified and fiercely protective. This child, though conceived in foolishness, was innocent of any wrongdoing. She would not let it suffer for her mistakes. Emma found herself standing in front of the general store, staring at the help wanted sign in the window. Before she could convince herself to go inside and inquire, the door opened and Mrs. Patterson emerged, a woman who had known Emma's mother for 20 years. Their eyes met, and Emma saw the recognition followed immediately by contempt. "Well," Mrs. Patterson said loudly enough for passers-by to hear, "I heard the news. Your poor mother. What you have done to her is unconscionable." Emma's face burned with humiliation. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could she possibly say? Mrs. Patterson brushed past her with a huff of indignation, and Emma felt the weight of shame pressing down on her shoulders like a physical burden. She continued walking, her vision blurred by tears. She passed the church where she had attended services every Sunday since childhood, knowing that sanctuary would likely be denied to her now. She passed the schoolhouse where she had once dreamed of becoming a teacher. Those dreams seemed to belong to someone else now, to a different Emma who had made different choices. The sun was sinking lower, and desperation was beginning to claw at her. She had nowhere to sleep, no food, and soon it would be dark. The spring nights could still be cold, and she had only a thin shawl for warmth. Emma found herself at the edge of town, near the livery stable. The smell of horses and hay filled her nostrils, a familiar scent that reminded her of simpler times. She was considering whether she might be able to sleep in the hayloft without being discovered when she heard a man's voice behind her. "You look lost." She turned to find a cowboy standing a few feet away, leading a beautiful chestnut mare. He was tall, with broad shoulders and sun-weathered skin that spoke of long days working outdoors. His eyes were a striking blue-gray, and there was something in his expression that was not judgmental or cruel, but rather curious and concerned. He appeared to be in his mid-20s, wearing dusty work clothes and a well-worn hat that shadowed his face. "I am fine, thank you," Emma lied, clutching her carpetbag closer to her chest. The cowboy studied her for a moment, his gaze taking in her tear-stained face, her rumpled dress, and the small bag that clearly contained everything she owned. "Does not look fine to me. You got somewhere to be before dark." Emma hesitated, pride warred with desperation. "I am just passing through." "On foot, with one small bag and the sun almost set." He shook his head slowly. "I have been around long enough to recognize trouble when I see it. My name is Benjamin Nash. I work a ranch about 5 miles north of here. Been in town picking up supplies." "Emma Dalton," she said quietly, then immediately regretted giving her name. He would surely hear about her disgrace soon enough, but Benjamin simply nodded, as if filing the information away. "Well, Miss Dalton, I do not mean to pry into your business, but I cannot in good conscience leave a woman alone out here with night coming on. Can I offer you a ride somewhere? Maybe you have family in one of the neighboring towns." "No," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No family." Benjamin's expression softened. He seemed to be weighing his words carefully. "Look, I do not know what brought you to this situation, and it is not my place to ask. But I have a small cabin on the ranch where I work. It is not much, but it has got a good roof and a warm stove. You are welcome to stay there tonight, at least until you figure out your next step." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "Why would you help me? You do not even know me." "Maybe not," Benjamin said, "but I know what it is like to need help and not have anywhere to turn. Few years back, I was broke and hungry, barely more than a kid. A rancher named Samuel Hayes gave me a job and a place to sleep when no one else would. Changed my whole life. Figure maybe I can pay that kindness forward." Emma's first instinct was to refuse. Accepting help from a strange man could be dangerous, and she had already made one terrible mistake by trusting the wrong person. But as the sun dipped lower and the air grew cooler, she realized she had no other options. She could either take a chance on this cowboy's kindness or spend the night exposed to the elements and whatever dangers might lurk in the darkness. "Just for tonight," she said finally. "And I will work to earn my keep. I can cook and clean and mend. I will not be a burden." Benjamin's face relaxed into something that might have been a smile. "All right then. Let us get moving before we lose the light." He helped her onto his horse, a gentlemanly gesture that reminded Emma of a time when such courtesies were commonplace in her life. She sat behind him, holding onto the back of the saddle as they rode north out of town. The prairie stretched out before them, vast and open, painted in the dying light of day. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying the scent of earth and growing things. They rode in silence for the first mile, but Emma found herself studying the man who had so unexpectedly come to her aid. His back was straight despite what must have been a long day's work, and he handled his horse with the easy confidence of someone who had spent most of his life in the saddle. There was something solid and dependable about him, a quality that she had thought she had seen in Thomas, but which had proven to be nothing more than illusion. "The ranch is called the Double H," Benjamin said over his shoulder. "Stands for Hayes Holdings. Mr. Hayes owns about 3,000 acres, runs cattle mostly. Good man to work for, fair and honest. And he will not mind you bringing a stranger to stay?" Emma asked nervously. "My cabin is my own business," Benjamin replied. "Mr. Hayes gave it to me when I became his foreman 2 years ago. Said every man deserves a place of his own." Emma absorbed this information, realizing that Benjamin was not just a hired hand but someone with responsibility and standing. It made his offer of help even more surprising. A man in his position had a reputation to consider. As if reading her thoughts, Benjamin spoke again. "I am sure you are wondering why I am doing this. Truth is, I do not rightly know myself. Just seemed like the right thing to do. You looked like someone who had reached the end of their rope, and I guess I remember what that feels like." "Thank you," Emma said softly. "You cannot know what this means to me." They rode on as the stars began to appear overhead, bright pinpricks of light in the darkening sky. The ranch came into view gradually, materializing out of the gathering dusk like something from a dream. Emma could make out the main house in the distance, a 2-story structure with warm light glowing from the windows. Closer to them were several outbuildings, corrals, and a barn. Benjamin guided his horse toward a small cabin set somewhat apart from the other structures, nestled among a stand of cottonwood trees. "Here we are," Benjamin said, dismounting and then helping Emma down. "It is not fancy, but it is clean and dry." He lit a lantern that hung by the door, and Emma got her first look at what was to be her temporary refuge. The cabin was indeed small, consisting of a single room with a pot-bellied stove, a narrow bed, a table with 2 chairs, and a few shelves holding basic supplies. But it was tidy and well-maintained, and after the turmoil of the day, it looked like paradise to Emma. "I will sleep in the barn," Benjamin said quickly, as if anticipating her concern. "You can have the cabin. There is wood for the stove and some basic food supplies. Not much, but enough for breakfast. Tomorrow we can figure out something more permanent." "I cannot take your bed," Emma protested. "You have already done so much." Benjamin waved off her objection. "The barn is fine. I have slept in worse places, believe me. You get some rest, Miss Dalton. Things always look better in the morning." He tipped his hat to her and was gone before she could argue further, disappearing into the darkness with his horse. Emma stood in the doorway of the cabin, watching until she could no longer see him. Then she stepped inside and closed the door, leaning against it as the events of the day finally caught up with her. She sank onto the bed and wept, not quietly but with great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. She cried for her lost innocence, for her broken relationship with her mother, for the uncertain future that stretched before her. But underneath, the grief was a tiny spark of something else, something that felt almost like hope. A stranger had shown her kindness when she had expected only condemnation. Perhaps the world was not entirely cruel after all. When her tears were finally spent, Emma built a small fire in the stove and heated water from the pump outside. She washed her face and hands, then sat at the table eating a piece of bread and cheese she found in Benjamin's supplies. It was the first food she had eaten since breakfast, and though it was simple fare, it tasted like a feast. That night, Emma lay in Benjamin's narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of the prairie night. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the wind rattled the shutters. She placed her hand on her stomach, imagining the life growing there. "I will protect you," she whispered into the darkness. "I will find a way to give you a good life, I promise." She woke the next morning to the sound of someone moving around outside. Sunlight streamed through the window, and for a moment, Emma forgot where she was. Then memory returned, and with it the heavy weight of her situation. She rose quickly and smoothed her dress, then opened the door to find Benjamin standing by the water pump, washing his face and hands. "Morning," he said, looking up with a slight smile. "Hope you slept all right." "Better than I expected," Emma admitted. "Thank you again for your kindness." Benjamin dried his hands on a cloth. "I have been thinking about your situation. Mr. Hayes is always looking for help up at the main house. His wife passed 2 years back, and he has been managing on his own with just a woman from town who comes in twice a week. If you are serious about working, I could introduce you to him. See if he might hire you on for cooking and housekeeping." Emma felt a surge of hope. "Do you really think he would consider it?" "Cannot say for certain, but it is worth asking. He is a fair man, like I said, does not judge people by their past but by what they do in the present." Benjamin paused, then added carefully, "Though I feel I should be honest with him about your circumstances, if that is all right with you. I do not like starting a thing with deception." Emma appreciated his directness even as it made her anxious. "What do you know about my circumstances?" "Only what I can see," Benjamin said. "A young woman cast out with nothing but a small bag and no place to go. I figure there is a story there, but it is yours to tell if and when you are ready." Emma took a deep breath. She had to trust someone, and this man had already proven himself worthy of that trust. "I am with child," she said quietly, the words heavy in the morning air. "The father wanted nothing to do with me when he found out. My mother cast me out. That is the whole sorry tale." Benjamin's expression did not change, did not fill with the disgust or condemnation she had expected. He simply nodded slowly, as if taking in new information. "That must have been hard, being abandoned like that." "It was my own fault," Emma said bitterly. "I should have known better." "Maybe," Benjamin said. "Or maybe you trusted someone who proved themselves untrustworthy. That is not quite the same thing as being at fault." He looked toward the main house. "Well, knowing that, I still think Mr. Hayes might give you a chance. He is more interested in a person's character than their mistakes. Let me talk to him first, feel him out. Then if he is agreeable, I will bring you up to meet him." "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked again, needing to understand. "You could have just left me in town." "No one would have faulted you for it." Benjamin was quiet for a moment, staring out at the prairie that stretched endlessly in all directions. "My ma died when I was young," he said finally. "My pa turned to drink and could not take care of me and my sister. She was 16 when she found herself in a situation similar to yours. The man promised marriage and then disappeared. Our pa threw her out, called her terrible names. She had nowhere to go." He paused, his jaw tightening. "She died 3 months later, her and the baby both. I was too young to help her then, but I am not too young now. Maybe I am helping you, or maybe I am trying to make up for not being able to help her. Either way, it feels like the right thing to do." Emma felt tears prick her eyes again. "I am so sorry about your sister." "It was a long time ago," Benjamin said, though the pain in his voice suggested otherwise. "But it taught me something about judging people. My sister was a good person who made one mistake and it cost her everything. That does not sit right with me. Never has." He excused himself to go speak with Samuel Hayes, leaving Emma to wait anxiously in the cabin. She tidied the small space, made the bed, and washed the few dishes she had used. Anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from spiraling into worry about what would happen if Hayes refused to hire her. An hour later, Benjamin returned with a broad smile. "Mr. Hayes wants to meet you. He is intrigued by the idea of having someone full-time to help with the house." "I did not go into details about your situation. Figured you should be the one to share what you feel comfortable sharing." Emma's heart pounded as she followed Benjamin up to the main house. It was even more impressive up close, with a wide porch and well-tended flower beds that were just beginning to bloom. Benjamin knocked on the door and then opened it, calling out, "Mr. Hayes, it is Benjamin with Miss Dalton." The man who appeared from the back of the house was in his late 50s, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes set in a weathered face. He wore simple but well-made clothing, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had earned his success through hard work. "Miss Dalton," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Samuel Hayes, Benjamin tells me you are looking for work." Emma shook his hand, trying to steady her nerves. "Yes, sir. I am experienced in cooking, cleaning, mending, and general household management. I am a hard worker and I do not complain." Samuel studied her for a moment with the same assessing look she had seen on Benjamin's face the day before. It was not unkind, but it was thorough. "Benjamin vouches for your character, which carries considerable weight with me. But I believe in honesty between employer and employee, so I will ask you plain. Are you running from something or someone? I will not harbor criminals or cause trouble with the law." "No, sir," Emma said firmly. "I am running from shame and judgment, but I have broken no laws. I made a mistake in trusting the wrong man, and now I am carrying his child. My mother cast me out, and I am trying to make a new start." Samuel's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained neutral. "I see. That is a difficult situation, to be sure. And the father?" "Gone," Emma said simply. "He wanted no part of fatherhood." Samuel was quiet for a long moment, and Emma felt her hope beginning to fade. Then he sighed and said, "My wife and I were never blessed with children, though we wanted them desperately. She would have been furious with me if I turned away a woman in your condition, especially one willing to work for her keep." He looked at Benjamin. "The small guest house out back has been sitting empty. It has got a bedroom, a sitting area, and its own kitchen. Miss Dalton could stay there, do the cooking and housekeeping for the main house. I will pay fair wages plus room and board." Emma felt dizzy with relief. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. You will not regret this, I promise." "I hope not," Samuel said, though not unkindly. "I will be straight with you, Miss Dalton. There will be folks who hear about your situation and disapprove. Some may even think less of me for taking you in. But I have found that most people are so busy judging others that they do not take proper care of their own souls. You work hard, you keep to yourself, and we will get along just fine." Over the following weeks, Emma settled into her new life on the Double H Ranch. The guest house was more spacious and comfortable than she had dared hope, with real glass windows and a stone fireplace. She threw herself into her work with fierce determination, rising before dawn to prepare breakfast for Samuel and the ranch hands, spending her days cleaning and mending and cooking. She wanted to prove herself indispensable, to earn the trust that had been placed in her. Benjamin became a frequent presence in her daily routine. He would stop by the kitchen for coffee, ostensibly to discuss ranch business with Samuel, but often lingering to talk with Emma. Their conversation started superficially, focused on the weather or the work that needed doing, but gradually deepened into something more substantial. Emma learned that Benjamin was 26 years old, had been working ranches since he was 15, and dreamed of someday owning land of his own. He had a quick intelligence and a dry sense of humor that emerged once he felt comfortable. He never asked prying questions about her past, but listened attentively when she chose to share pieces of her story. For his part, Benjamin seemed drawn to Emma in a way that both thrilled and frightened her. She would catch him watching her sometimes with an expression she could not quite read, something tender and wondering. But he was always respectful, never overstepping the bounds of propriety, never making her feel uncomfortable or pressured. As spring turned to early summer, Emma's pregnancy became more apparent. Her dresses grew tight around her middle, and she had to let out seams and add panels. Some of the ranch hands noticed and whispered among themselves, but if Samuel heard any disrespectful talk, he shut it down immediately. The Double H was his ranch, and anyone who worked there would treat Miss Dalton with courtesy or find employment elsewhere. One evening in late June, Emma was sitting on the porch of her small house, watching the sun set over the prairie. The heat of the day was fading, replaced by a pleasant coolness. She had her hand on her stomach, feeling the baby move inside her. The sensation still amazed her, this proof of life growing within her body. "Mind if I join you?" Benjamin's voice came from the gathering shadows. "Please," Emma said, gesturing to the chair beside her. Benjamin sat, removing his hat and running a hand through his dark hair. He was quiet for a moment, just sitting with her in comfortable silence. Then he said, "I have been meaning to talk to you about something." Emma felt a flutter of nervousness. "What is it?" "Well, I have been thinking about your situation, about the baby coming and what that means for you." Benjamin turned to look at her directly. "I know we have not known each other long, just a couple of months now. But I feel like I have come to know you pretty well in that time. You are one of the strongest, most determined women I have ever met. You work harder than anyone on this ranch, and you never complain or feel sorry for yourself." "I am just trying to make the best of my circumstances," Emma said softly. "It is more than that," Benjamin insisted. "You are building a life out of nothing, creating something good from a bad situation. That takes real courage." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "The thing is, I have grown mighty fond of you, Emma. More than fond, if I am being honest. And I know you are dealing with a lot right now, and maybe this is not the right time to say any of this, but I cannot keep it to myself any longer." Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Benjamin could hear it. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I care about you, and I care about that baby you are carrying, even though it is not mine. I know what it is like to grow up without a father, and I do not want that for your child." Benjamin leaned forward, his eyes intense in the fading light. "I want to offer you something, and I need you to hear me out before you answer." "All right," Emma whispered. "My home is yours now," Benjamin said, the words simple but weighted with meaning. "Marry me, Emma. Let me give your baby a name and a father. Let me give you the protection and security you deserve. I am not a rich man, but I am a hard worker, and I will provide for you and the child. And more than that, I will do my best to make you happy." Emma stared at him, her mind reeling. This was the last thing she had expected. "Benjamin, you do not have to do this. You do not owe me anything." "This is not about obligation," Benjamin said firmly. "This is about what I want. I am asking you to marry me because I cannot imagine my life without you in it now. These past weeks, getting to know you, talking with you, watching you build a new life for yourself, it has made me realize what I have been missing. I want to come home to you every evening. I want to sit on this porch with you when we are old and gray. I want to raise your child as my own and maybe have more children together if you are willing." Tears were streaming down Emma's face now, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of overwhelming emotion, of gratitude and wonder and something that felt suspiciously like love. I do not know what to say. Say yes, Benjamin said, reaching out to take her hand. His palm was calloused from hard work, but his touch was gentle. Say you will give us a chance. I know you were hurt before, and I know trust does not come easy after that, but I am not Thomas Henderson. I am not going anywhere. I am here, and I am asking you to build a life with me. Emma looked down at their joined hands, then up at Benjamin's face. She saw sincerity there, and hope, and yes, love. It was different from what she had felt with Thomas. That had been passionate but ultimately shallow, based on pretty words and false promises. This was something deeper, something built on respect and genuine caring. I care about you too, Emma said, her voice trembling. I have been afraid to admit it, even to myself. But yes, Benjamin. Yes, I will marry you. The smile that broke across Benjamin's face was like the sun coming up. He stood and pulled her gently to her feet, wrapping his arms around her in a careful embrace that accommodated her swelling belly. You have made me the happiest man in Nebraska, he said into her hair. They stood there for a long time, holding each other as the stars began to appear overhead. Emma felt something shift inside her, a loosening of the tight knot of fear and shame she had been carrying for months. She was not foolish enough to think that all her problems were solved, that marriage to Benjamin would magically erase her past or make the judgment of others disappear. But for the first time since Thomas had left her, she felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Samuel Hayes was delighted by the news of their engagement and insisted on hosting a proper wedding at the ranch. My Eliza would have loved this, he said, his eyes misty. She always said this house needed more joy in it. The wedding took place 2 weeks later on a beautiful July morning. Samuel had invited several neighboring ranchers and their families, people who knew Benjamin and respected him. If any of them were scandalized by his choice to marry a pregnant woman, they were wise enough to keep their opinions to themselves in Samuel's presence. Emma wore a simple blue dress that she had altered to fit her changing figure, and Benjamin wore his best suit, looking handsome and proud. The ceremony was performed by a traveling preacher who happened to be passing through Kearney. An elderly man with a kind face who asked no questions about why the bride was clearly expecting. When Benjamin slipped the ring on Emma's finger, a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, she felt tears slip down her cheeks. This time, though, they were tears of joy. Benjamin's voice was steady and sure as he spoke his vows, promising to love and cherish her all the days of his life. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the preacher said, beaming. You may kiss your bride. Benjamin cupped Emma's face in his hands and kissed her gently, reverently, as if she were something precious and fragile. When they broke apart, the small gathering of guests erupted in applause and cheers. The celebration that followed was modest but heartfelt. There was food and music and dancing on the lawn of the main house. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in months, swept up in the joy of the occasion. Samuel gave a toast wishing the newlyweds a long and happy life together, and several of the ranch hands offered their congratulations with genuine warmth. As the sun began to set and the guests started to depart, Emma and Benjamin said their goodnights and walked hand in hand to the small cabin that would now be their home together. Samuel had already given them his blessing to expand the cabin into a proper house when the time was right, but for now, it would serve. Inside, Benjamin lit the lantern and turned to face his new wife. There was something shy in his expression, a nervousness that Emma found endearing. I want you to know, he said carefully, that I do not expect anything tonight. I know this has all happened quickly, and you are carrying a baby, and well, I just want you to be comfortable. Emma felt a rush of affection for this good man who had become her husband. She stepped closer to him, placing her hand on his chest. Benjamin Nash, you are too good to be true sometimes. I am comfortable. I am happy. And I am your wife now." She reached up and kissed him, and this time there was more heat in it, more promise. Benjamin responded carefully at first, then with growing confidence as Emma pressed closer. They undressed each other slowly in the lamplight, and Benjamin was infinitely gentle with her, conscious of her condition but not treating her as if she might break. Afterward, they lay together in the narrow bed, Emma's head on Benjamin's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I never thought I could be this happy again," she murmured. "After everything that happened, I thought joy was something that would always be out of reach for me." Benjamin's arm tightened around her. "You deserve happiness, Emma. You deserve all the good things in life, and I am going to spend the rest of my days trying to give them to you." The summer passed in a haze of contentment. Emma continued her work at the main house as long as she was able, though Benjamin fussed over her constantly, worried that she was doing too much. By August, her belly was round and prominent, and the baby's movements were strong enough that Benjamin could feel them when he placed his hand on her stomach at night. "Your son is going to be a fighter," Emma said one evening, wincing as the baby delivered a particularly vigorous kick. "Or daughter," Benjamin countered. "And of course the baby will be strong. Look at the mother." They spent their evenings making plans for the future, talking about names for the baby and how they would expand the cabin before winter. Benjamin was careful always to refer to the baby as ours, not yours, and Emma loved him more for that small but significant choice. In early September, Emma's labor began just before dawn. She woke Benjamin with a gasp, clutching her stomach. "It is time," she said, her voice tight with pain. Benjamin went pale but sprang into action. He rode to town at breakneck speed to fetch the midwife, a no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Chen, who had delivered half the babies in the county. By the time they returned, Samuel was at Emma's side, holding her hand and talking to her in a soothing voice, doing his best to keep her calm. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through most of the day. Benjamin paced outside the cabin like a caged animal, unable to sit still, jumping at every sound from inside. Samuel eventually managed to convince him to eat something and sit down, but Benjamin could barely swallow a bite. "She is strong," Samuel kept saying. "She will be fine. The baby will be fine." As the sun began to set, a new sound joined Emma's cries of pain. The thin, reedy wail of a newborn baby filled the air, and Benjamin was on his feet in an instant. Mrs. Chen emerged from the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron, a tired smile on her face. "You have a healthy baby boy," she announced, "and your wife is doing well. Tired, but well. You can go in now." Benjamin did not need to be told twice. He burst through the door to find Emma propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. She looked up as he entered, and the smile on her face was brilliant. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Benjamin approached almost reverently, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. Emma pulled back the blanket so he could see the baby's face. The infant had a shock of dark hair and a red, wrinkled face that was somehow the most beautiful thing Benjamin had ever seen. "He is perfect," Benjamin whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You are both perfect." "Do you want to hold him?" Emma asked. Benjamin held out his arms, and Emma gently transferred the baby to him. The weight of the child was slight but significant, and Benjamin felt something shift fundamentally in his chest as he looked down at this new life. "Hello there, little one," he murmured. "I am your papa, and I am going to love you and protect you every single day of your life." Emma watched her husband with their son, and she felt her heart swell with love so intense it was almost painful. This man who owed her nothing had given her everything. He had given her a home, a name, his protection, and his love. And now he was giving this baby the gift of a father, freely and without reservation. "What should we name him?" Emma asked. They had discussed names but never quite settled on one. Benjamin looked thoughtful, still cradling the baby carefully. "What about David? It means beloved, and he is beloved by both of us." "David Nash," Emma said, testing the name. "I like it. It is strong but gentle like his father." "David Samuel Nash," Benjamin added, glancing toward the door where Samuel was undoubtedly waiting anxiously for news. "After the man who gave us both a second chance." Emma felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were happy tears. "Perfect, Mrs. Chen stayed for several days, making sure both Emma and the baby were healthy and teaching Benjamin how to help care for the infant. Samuel was a frequent visitor, clearly delighted to have a baby on the ranch. He brought gifts, a beautifully carved wooden cradle that he had made himself and a soft blanket that had belonged to his late wife. "Eliza would have wanted the baby to have this," Samuel said, his voice gruff with emotion. "She always hoped we would have children. I think she would be happy knowing it is being used now." As Emma recovered from the birth, she watched Benjamin with David and fell even more deeply in love with her husband. He was a natural father, patient and gentle despite having no experience with babies. He would wake in the night when David cried, bringing the baby to Emma for feeding and then walking the floor with him afterward, singing soft lullabies in a voice that was surprisingly melodic. The ranch hands came by to meet the new arrival, offering awkward congratulations and bringing small gifts. Whatever gossip there might have been about David's parentage was apparently squelched by Benjamin's obvious pride and joy in his son. He never once acted as if David were anything other than his own child, and eventually, people simply accepted the Nash family as they were, as autumn painted the prairie in shades of gold and crimson. Emma and Benjamin settled into the rhythms of parenthood. It was exhausting and demanding, but there was also a deep satisfaction in it. Emma had never felt more purposeful, more needed, more loved. One cool October evening, with David asleep in his cradle and a fire crackling in the stove, Emma and Benjamin sat together at the small table, drinking coffee and simply enjoying the quiet. "I have been thinking," Benjamin said, wrapping his hands around his cup. "Mr. Hayes has offered to sell me 200 acres on the eastern edge of the ranch. Good land with water access. He is giving me a fair price and says I can pay him back over time." Emma's eyes widened. "Your own land. Benjamin, that is wonderful." "Our own land," Benjamin corrected. "I want to build us a real house, Emma. Something bigger with proper rooms for our family, and I want to build our own herd, work toward having our own ranch someday." "Our family," Emma repeated softly. "I like the sound of that." Benjamin reached across the table and took her hand. "I meant what I said on our wedding day. I want to spend my life with you, Emma. I want to grow old with you, raise David together, and maybe have more children if we are blessed. You and David, you are my family now, and I could not be happier." Emma stood and came around the table, settling herself on Benjamin's lap and wrapping her arms around his neck. "I love you," she said, the words flowing easily now, though they had been hard to say at first. "I love you so much, Benjamin. You saved my life in more ways than one. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me a home when I was cast out. You gave my son a father and me a true partner." Benjamin kissed her deeply, his arms tight around her. "You saved me too," he murmured against her lips. "I did not even realize how lonely I was until you came into my life. I was just going through the motions, working and sleeping and working some more. But you made me want more. You made me want a future, not just an existence." They sat together in the firelight, talking about their dreams and making plans for the future. Benjamin wanted to start building their house in the spring, taking advantage of the good weather. Emma wanted to plant a garden, grow vegetables and herbs and maybe some flowers to brighten their yard. They talked about teaching David to ride, about expanding their land over time, about the life they would build together. Winter arrived with a vengeance that year, blanketing the prairie in snow and driving the temperature below zero. But the little cabin was snug and warm, heated by the pot-bellied stove and the love of the small family inside. David grew rapidly, becoming more alert and responsive with each passing week. He would smile when Benjamin came home from work, reaching his tiny hands toward his father. Christmas came, and Samuel insisted they celebrate together in the main house. He had gone to town and purchased gifts for everyone, including a wooden rocking horse for David, even though the baby was far too young to use it yet. "He will grow into it," Samuel said gruffly when Emma protested that it was too much. "Besides, I have no one else to spoil." They spent a lovely evening together, the four of them, eating a fine dinner and exchanging modest gifts. Emma gave Samuel a muffler she had knitted, and he was genuinely touched. Benjamin gave Samuel a new saddle he had been working on for months in secret, tooling intricate designs into the leather. Samuel's eyes grew misty as he examined the craftsmanship. "You boys are like the sons I never had," Samuel said, looking between Benjamin and little David. "And Emma, you are like the daughter Eliza and I always wanted. This is the best Christmas I have had in years." As the new year of 1880 arrived, Emma reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in less than a year. She had gone from despair and disgrace to happiness and belonging. She had a husband who adored her, a healthy son, a home, and a future full of promise. In March, as the first signs of spring appeared, Benjamin began working on their new house. Several of the ranch hands helped during their free time, and slowly but surely, the structure took shape. It would have 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, a sitting room, and even a small study where Benjamin could manage the business of their growing ranch. Emma was thrilled to discover in April that she was pregnant again. When she told Benjamin, he picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing with joy. David, now 7 months old and sitting up on his own, clapped his chubby hands as if he understood the celebration. "Another baby," Benjamin said wonderingly. "A brother or sister for David." "Our family is growing, Emma." The house was completed in late summer, just in time for them to move in before Emma's pregnancy became too advanced. It was beautiful, far nicer than anything Emma had imagined she would ever have. Benjamin had built it with such care, putting in little touches that he knew she would love, like a wide window in the kitchen that looked out over the prairie, and a deep bathtub that was a true luxury. In November of 1880, Emma gave birth to twin daughters, an unexpected surprise that had Benjamin walking on air for weeks. The girls were tiny but healthy, with Emma's dark hair and Benjamin's blue-gray eyes. "We will name them Hannah and Lily," Emma decided, cradling one baby in each arm. "Hannah after your mother and Lily after my grandmother, the only member of my family who ever truly understood me." Benjamin was an attentive father to all 3 children, dividing his time equally among them. David, now over a year old and toddling around on unsteady legs, was fascinated by his baby sisters. He would sit beside their cradle and babble to them in his own language, making Emma and Benjamin laugh. The years that followed were full and rich. Benjamin's land prospered, and their herd grew steadily. Emma managed the household with skill and efficiency, and also kept the books for their ranch, discovering she had a head for numbers. They became known in the community as hardworking, honest people, and whatever scandal had once surrounded Emma's past was forgotten or overlooked. Samuel Hayes remained a fixture in their lives, a beloved grandfather figure to the children. He taught David to ride when the boy was just 3 years old, patient and encouraging as the child learned. He spoiled the twins shamelessly, always bringing them little treats when he visited. In 1883, Emma gave birth to another son, whom they named Samuel Benjamin Nash in honor of the two men who had shaped their lives most profoundly. Samuel Hayes wept openly when they told him, making no effort to hide his emotion. Emma's relationship with her biological family remained severed. She had written to her mother once, a year after David's birth, hoping that time and distance might have softened the woman's heart. The letter came back unopened, and Emma never tried again. It hurt, but the pain was bearable because she had created a new family, one built on love and acceptance rather than judgment and shame. The ranch continued to prosper over the years. By 1885, Benjamin and Emma owned 800 acres and ran a successful cattle operation. They had earned the respect of their neighbors and were considered pillars of the community. Emma occasionally allowed herself to marvel at how far she had come from that terrified young woman, standing at the end of a dirt road with nowhere to go. The children grew healthy and strong. David showed an aptitude for ranching and often followed Benjamin around, eager to learn everything his father could teach him. The twins were bright and curious, already learning to read by the time they were 4. Little Samuel was a happy, easy baby who rarely cried and seemed content just to be surrounded by his family. One evening in the summer of 1886, Emma and Benjamin sat on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set. David, now 7, was teaching the twins how to identify different types of birds. Baby Samuel dozed in Emma's arms, his thumb in his mouth. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Emma asked quietly. Benjamin was silent for a moment, considering. "Sometimes," he admitted. "I think about that day in town when I found you looking so lost. I almost did not say anything. I almost just rode past. And then where would we be?" "I would probably be dead," Emma said bluntly. "Or living in poverty somewhere, struggling to survive. And you would still be alone, eating beans out of a can and sleeping in that tiny cabin." "Instead, I have this," Benjamin said, gesturing to encompass the house, the land, the children, Emma herself. "I have everything I never knew I wanted. You gave me that, Emma. You and these kids, you gave my life meaning and purpose." "You gave me those things first," Emma countered. "You looked at me when I was at my lowest point and saw something worth saving. You gave me dignity when the world wanted to strip it away. You gave my child a name and a family. I can never repay that." "There is nothing to repay," Benjamin said firmly. He reached over and took her hand, their fingers interlacing naturally after years of practice. "We saved each other. We built this life together. That is what matters." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, watching as David showed the twins a bird's nest he had found, his young voice carrying across the yard. "I am so happy," she said simply. "Even with everything that happened, all the pain and the shame and the fear, I would not change it because it led me here to you, to this family, to this life." "I am happy too," Benjamin said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Every single day I wake up grateful. Grateful for you, for our children, for this land we have built something on. My home became yours that day, Emma, and you made it something beautiful." As darkness fell and the stars began to appear, they called the children inside. There was the happy chaos of getting everyone cleaned up and ready for bed, of reading stories and singing lullabies. Emma tucked the twins into the bed they shared, kissing each small forehead. Benjamin carried a sleepy David to his room, the boy's arms wrapped around his father's neck. Later, with all the children asleep, Emma and Benjamin lay in their own bed, wrapped in each other's arms. "Do you think we will have more children?" Emma asked, her hand resting on Benjamin's chest. "Maybe," Benjamin said. "Would you want more?" "I think so," Emma said. "I love being a mother. I love our family. Every child feels like a gift, like proof that good things can come from bad situations." "Then we will see what the future brings," Benjamin said. "Whatever happens, we will face it together. That is what we do." Emma fell asleep feeling safe and loved, surrounded by the life she had built with Benjamin. The scared young woman who had been cast out by her mother seemed like someone from another lifetime now. That Emma had been broken and lost. This Emma was whole, was found, was loved beyond measure. The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and milestones. Emma did indeed have 2 more children, another set of twins born in 1888, boys they named Matthew and Luke. Benjamin joked that they were going to need a bigger house, but his eyes shone with pride every time he looked at his large, boisterous family. David grew into a fine young man, responsible and hardworking. He had Benjamin's steady nature and Emma's intelligence, and by the time he was 16, he was essentially running half the ranch on his own. The twins, Hannah and Lily, were inseparable, 2 halves of the same whole, bright and spirited girls who kept Emma on her toes. Samuel grew tall and quiet, more inclined to books than ranching, which both Emma and Benjamin encouraged. The youngest twins were only 8, still children, full of energy and mischief. In 1894, Samuel Hayes passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 73. His death hit the family hard, particularly Benjamin and David, who had both looked up to him as a grandfather figure. He left the main house and the remaining land of the Double H Ranch to Benjamin and Emma, with a note explaining that they had always been like family to him, and he could think of no one better to carry on his legacy. "He gave us our start," Benjamin said at the funeral, his voice thick with emotion. "He believed in us when others would not. We will honor his memory by living the way he taught us to live, with honesty and integrity and kindness." They kept the main house, but continued to live in the home Benjamin had built, turning the larger structure into a gathering place for the family and a bunkhouse for the ranch hands they now employed. The Double H brand merged with the Nash Ranch, and they became one of the largest operations in the county. In 1898, Emma received an unexpected letter. It was from her youngest sister, the one who had been only 14 when Emma was cast out. The sister, now 23 and married with a child of her own, explained that their mother had passed away the previous year. She wanted to reconnect with Emma, to apologize for the years of silence, and to meet the family she had only heard about through local gossip. Emma held the letter with shaking hands, unsure how to feel. Benjamin wrapped his arms around her from behind, reading over her shoulder. "What do you want to do?" he asked gently. "I do not know," Emma admitted. "Part of me wants to ignore it, to let the past stay buried. But another part of me remembers the little girl who used to follow me everywhere, who cried when Mama made me leave. She was just a child then. She had no choice." "Then invite her to visit," Benjamin suggested. "Meet her again as the woman you are now, not the scared girl you were. Let her see what you have built, the life you have created, and then decide if you want her to be part of it." Emma took his advice, and her sister came to visit that summer with her husband and baby daughter. The reunion was emotional and awkward at first, but gradually, the sisters began to rebuild their relationship. Emma showed her around the ranch, introduced her to Benjamin and the children, and told her the story of how she had survived and thrived after being cast out. "I am so sorry I did not stand up for you," her sister said, tears streaming down her face. I was young and scared of Mama, but that is no excuse. You did not deserve what happened to you." "I have forgiven her," Emma said, surprising herself with the truth of it. "And I forgive you too. What happened made me who I am today, and I like who I am. I have a good life, a wonderful husband, beautiful children. I am happy, and that is the best revenge against those who thought my life was over." Her sister visited regularly after that, and gradually a new relationship formed. It would never be what it had been in their childhood, but it was something, a connection to the past that did not hurt anymore. As the new century approached, Emma and Benjamin found themselves entering middle age surrounded by love and prosperity. David was 21 now, courting a nice girl from a neighboring ranch. The older twins, Hannah and Lily, were 16 and already drawing the attention of several young men in the area, much to Benjamin's dismay. Samuel was 15, planning to attend university in Lincoln to study law. The younger twins, Matthew and Luke, were 12 and just beginning to show interest in the opposite sex, though they still spent most of their time getting into trouble. On New Year's Eve of 1899, as the old century gave way to the new, the entire family gathered at the main house for a celebration. David brought his intended, a sweet-faced girl named Sarah who fit right into the family. Emma's sister came with her family, now including 3 children. Several neighboring families joined them, people who had become dear friends over the years. As midnight approached, Benjamin stood and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd. 20 years ago, I met a young woman who changed my life forever. She was scared and alone, and I offered her a place to stay. I told her my home was hers now. What I did not realize then was that she would take that home and transform it into something I never imagined possible." He looked directly at Emma, his eyes shining with love. "Emma, you have given me everything. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to build something lasting. You took my simple offer of shelter and turned it into a life full of love and joy and meaning. These 20 years with you have been the best of my life, and I look forward to however many more we are blessed with." Emma felt tears running down her cheeks as Benjamin came to her side. He took her hand and kissed it gently, a gesture he had performed countless times over their years together. The assembled guests raised their glasses in a toast, and then the clock struck midnight, ushering in the year 1900 and a new century. Emma looked around the room at her family, this beautiful, chaotic, wonderful family that she had helped create. She thought about the terrified 20-year-old girl she had been, standing at the end of a dirt road with nothing but a small bag and 47 cents. That girl could never have imagined this future, this abundance of love and happiness. Benjamin wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Happy New Year, my love," he murmured into her ear. "Happy New Year," Emma replied, rising on her toes to kiss him. "And thank you." "For what?" Benjamin asked, though he was smiling. "For everything," Emma said simply. "For seeing me when I was invisible, for giving me a home when I had nowhere to go, for loving me when I thought I was unlovable, for being the best husband and father I could ever have asked for making my life beautiful." "You made it beautiful," Benjamin corrected. "I just gave you the space to do it. Everything else, all of this, that is you, Emma. Your strength, your love, your determination to build something good from nothing." They stood together as the party continued around them, surrounded by the life they had created, the family they had built, the love they had nurtured. Outside, the prairie stretched endlessly under a sky full of stars, the same prairie that had witnessed their first meeting, their wedding, the birth of their children, and every moment of joy and sorrow in between. Emma thought about the cowboy who had said those simple words that changed everything. "My home is yours now." He had offered her shelter, but what he had really given her was a future. And together, they had made that future into something extraordinary, a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of kindness and second chances. As the new century began, Emma Nash née Dalton knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with the man she was meant to be with, living the life she was meant to live. The journey from despair to joy had been long and difficult, but every step had been worth it. Her home was his home, and together they had made it a place of love, laughter, and endless possibility. And that, Emma thought as she rested her head on Benjamin's shoulder, was the greatest gift of all.